I am Thomas Sterling, 27 years old, and 10 years ago my family threw me out into a blizzard because of a pregnancy that wasn't mine. Before I tell you about the moment my mother fell to her knees in a crowded hospital hallway, begging for the very blood she once claimed was tainted, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. I read every single one of them. The engine of a Rolls-Royce Phantom is a ghost. That is why they name it that. You press the pedal, and 6,000 pounds of steel and luxury surge forward. But you don't hear a roar. You just feel the world move around you. It is a quiet kind of power. The kind of power I didn't have when I was 17. I turned the steering wheel, guiding the massive black car onto Oak Street. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Most people were at work. The street looked the same as it did a decade ago. The same maple trees, though now their roots had cracked the sidewalks a bit more. The same mailboxes standing like little soldiers at the end of driveways. But number 42 was different. My parents' house, the house where I grew up, the house where I was erased, looked like a dying animal. The grass was knee-high, yellow and dry. The white paint was peeling in long, ugly strips, revealing the gray wood underneath like old bones. And there, stuck right in the middle of the overgrown lawn, was a sign. Foreclosure auction. Bank owned. I parked the Rolls-Royce right at the curb. I didn't block the driveway. I wanted them to have a clear view. I killed the engine and just sat there for a moment. The leather of the seat was cool against my back. The air conditioning hummed, smelling of expensive cologne and new car. Outside it was 90 degrees and humid, but in here I was untouchable. I looked at my hands on the steering wheel. No grease under the fingernails today. A gold watch on my left wrist that cost more than my father used to make in 2 years. I had spent the last decade building armor around myself, layer by layer, dollar by dollar. Today I was going to test if it was strong enough. I opened the door and stepped out. The heat hit me instantly. I buttoned my suit jacket. It was Italian wool, tailored to fit me perfectly. I adjusted my cuffs and walked toward the house. A curtain twitched in the window of Mrs. Jenkins' house next door. She was still there, then, probably still watching everything, still spreading gossip like a virus. I ignored her. My focus was on the front door of number 42. I didn't knock. I didn't need to. I had the keys in my pocket. Not the old house keys I gave back the night they disowned me. These were new keys. The bank gave them to me 3 hours ago. But before I could put the key in the lock, the door opened. It was my mother, Linda. She looked small. That was the first thing that hit me. In my memories, she was this looming figure of authority, standing beside my father, arms crossed, judging me. Now, she was just an old woman in a faded floral dress that hung too loose on her frame. Her hair, once dyed a perfect chestnut brown, was gray and thin. She stopped dead in the doorway. She held a cardboard box in her hands. It was full of old picture frames and knickknacks. They were packing. They were finally leaving. She looked at the car behind me. Her eyes widened. Then she looked at my shoes. Polished leather. Then my suit. Finally, she looked at my face. Recognition is a funny thing. I saw the confusion first. She saw a businessman, a stranger. Then she saw the eyes. "Thomas?" she whispered. The box in her hands trembled. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I just stood there. "Hello, Linda." I didn't call her mom. I hadn't called her that in 10 years. "Thomas," she said again, louder this time. She took a step onto the porch. Is that you?" "It's me," I said. My voice was deeper than she remembered. Calmer. "You're blocking the door." We didn't know you were." She looked around nervously, like she was afraid the neighbors would see. "What are you doing here? Did you hear about the house? We have to be out by 5. The bank took it." "Your father is." She choked up. "We have nowhere to go, Thomas." "I know," I said. "I bought it." She blinked. "What? The house?" I said, pulling the deed out of my inside pocket. "I bought the debt from the bank this morning. I own number 42, Oak Street." The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. She dropped the box. Glass shattered on the porch floor. A picture frame broke. It was a photo of and my adopted sister, the golden child. The reason for all of this. You bought our house? Linda stammered. My house, I corrected her. And I'm not here for a reunion. I'm here to inspect my property. I have a demolition crew scheduled for next week. Demolition. She grabbed the door frame for support. But this is our home. We raised you here. You raised a son here, I said, stepping closer. And then you threw him away here. Now step aside. I walked past her. I didn't help her clean up the broken glass. I walked into the living room. The smell hit me first. It smelled of stale medicine, old dust, and fear. The furniture was gone, sold off I assumed. There was just a hospital bed in the middle of the living room, and a few folding chairs. And there they were. My father, Robert. He was lying in the hospital bed, hooked up to a small dialysis machine. He looked yellow. His skin was like parchment paper. The man who used to terrify me with just a look was now a skeleton breathing through a tube. And sitting next to him, scrolling on her phone, was Anne. She looked up. She hadn't changed much, just harder around the edges. Too much makeup, trying to hide the lines of a hard life. She saw me and frowned. She didn't recognize me instantly like Mom did. She just saw a man in a suit. Who are you? She snapped. We have until 5 o'clock. The sheriff isn't supposed to be here yet. It's Thomas, Linda said from the doorway behind me. Her voice was shaking and froze. She lowered her phone. She looked me up and down, her eyes landing on the expensive watch, the suit, the confidence. I could see the gears turning in her head. She wasn't looking at a brother. She was looking at a wallet. Thomas, and stood up, putting on a fake smile that made my stomach turn. Oh my God, Tommy, look at you. She took a step toward me, arms open for a hug. I held up a hand. Don't. She stopped, looking offended. What? It's been 10 years. Don't tell me you're still holding a grudge about high school drama. High school drama, I repeated. I looked at my father. His eyes were open now. He was staring at me. There was no love in those eyes, just shock and shame. I'm not here to hug you, and, I said, I'm here to evict you. The silence in that room was heavy, pressed down on us. I looked at the 3 people who were supposed to be my world, my safety net, and all I felt was a cold, hard satisfaction. But beneath that, buried deep under the suit and the money and the anger, was the 17-year-old boy who just wanted to know why. But I wasn't going to ask. Not yet. You have 1 hour, I said, checking my watch. Get your things. Get him. I pointed to my father. Into a transport. If you're not off my property by the time the hour hand hits 3, I call the police for trespassing. You can't do that. And screamed. He's sick. He's dying. I lived in a car for 6 months during winter, I said, my voice dead calm. I think he can handle a van ride. I turned my back on them and walked to the window, looking out at my Rolls Royce. I could hear my mother sobbing behind me. I could hear and cursing. But my mind was drifting back. Back to the night the music stopped. Back to the night my life ended and began at the same time. To understand why I stood in that living room with a heart made of stone, you have to go back 10 years. I was 17, a senior in high school. I was a good kid. I know everyone says that, but I really was. I had a 3.8 GPA. I was the captain of the wrestling team. I had a girlfriend named Sarah who I thought I was going to marry. And I had a sister, and my parents adopted, and when she was 8, I was 9. From the moment she walked through the door, she was the princess. She had come from a rough foster home, and my parents, Robert and Linda, made it their mission to save her. I was okay with that. I wanted to be a big brother. I helped her with her math homework. I scared off the bullies who made fun of her secondhand clothes until my parents bought her a whole new wardrobe, better than mine. And learned early on that tears were currency. If she broke a vase, she cried and said I pushed her. I got grounded. If she failed a test, She said I distracted her. I lost my allowance. My parents were so obsessed with being the perfect saviors that they couldn't see the monster they were feeding. Fast forward to their 25th wedding anniversary party. The house, number 42 Oak Street, was packed. Relatives, neighbors, my dad's business partners. There were balloons, catering, a jazz band in the backyard. It was the peak of the Miller family success. My dad owned a small chain of hardware stores. We were pillar of the community types. I was standing by the punch bowl waiting for Sarah. I had bought her a promise ring. I was nervous, sweating in my cheap rental tuxedo. Then the music stopped and was in the middle of the room. She was 16 then. She was wearing a white dress, looking like an angel, but she was crying. That sound, I still hear it in my nightmares. A high-pitched, keening wail. "Mom! Dad!" she screamed. Everyone went silent. My father, holding a glass of champagne, rushed over. "Annie? Sweetheart, what's wrong?" I can't hide it anymore," she sobbed, falling to her knees dramatically. "I'm pregnant." The room gasped. You could actually hear the air being sucked out of the room. My mother dropped her napkin. My father went red. For a family that prided itself on image, this was a nuclear bomb. "Who?" my father demanded. His voice was shaking with rage. "Who did this to you? I'll kill him." I felt bad for her. I really did. I took a step forward, thinking maybe I could help diffuse the situation, maybe get her into the kitchen away from the staring eyes. Then and looked up. Her eyes locked on mine. "It was Thomas," she whispered, but in the silence it sounded like a gunshot. "What?" I said. I actually laughed nervously. It was so absurd. "And what are you talking about? That's sick." "He forced me," she screamed, pointing a finger at me. "He said if I told anyone he'd hurt me. He comes into my room at night." "Mom, please," I was so scared. I looked around the room. I expected to see people laughing. I expected my parents to say, "Don't be ridiculous," and instead I saw horror. "You animal," my father whispered. "Dad, no." I stepped back, my hands up. "Dad, she's lying. You know me. I've never touched her. I'm her brother." My father didn't listen. He didn't ask for proof. He didn't ask for my side. He just reacted. He crossed the room in 2 strides and swung. His fist connected with my jaw. I saw stars. I stumbled back, knocking over the punch bowl. Red liquid splashed everywhere, looking like blood on the white carpet. "Robert!" my mother screamed, but she didn't move to stop him. She rushed to and, wrapping her arms around her. "Oh, my poor baby. My poor, innocent baby." I was on the floor, tasting copper. My jaw felt like it was unhinged. I looked up at Sarah, my girlfriend, the girl I loved. "Sarah," I choked out. "Tell them. I was with you. You know I wouldn't." Sarah looked at me with disgust. She took the small box with the promise ring out of her purse and threw it at me. It hit me in the chest. "Don't talk to me," she hissed. "I knew there was something wrong with you. That hurt more than the punch." "Get out," my father roared. He grabbed me by the collar of my shirt and dragged me toward the front door. I was kicking, trying to get my footing. "Dad, stop. Listen to me. Take a paternity test. I'll take a lie detector test. Please. You are not my son." He spat in my face. "You are a predator. You are filth." He threw me out the front door. I tumbled down the porch steps, landing hard on the concrete walkway. It had started to rain. A freezing, sleeting rain. "Dad, please." I got up, my tuxedo soaked instantly. "Where am I supposed to go?" "Go to hell," he said. "I'm calling the police. If you're not gone in 5 minutes, you'll be in a cell." He went back inside and slammed the door. I heard the lock click. I stood there for a minute, shivering, blood running down my chin. I looked at the window. I saw and peeking out through the curtains. She wasn't crying anymore. She was watching me, and for a split second she smiled. A small, triumphant smirk. She had gotten away with it. She had covered up her mistake, probably with some guy from school, by destroying my life. The police sirens wailed in the distance. I ran. I didn't have my car keys. I didn't have my wallet. I just had the clothes on my back and a promise ring in my pocket that nobody wanted. That night, I hid in the woods behind the old lumber yard until the police cruisers stopped patrolling. I was freezing. I was in physical pain. But the emotional pain was a black hole. My mother hadn't said a word. She had chosen. They had all chosen. I was erased. The next day, I tried to go back to get my things. My stuff was on the lawn in garbage bags. My laptop was smashed. My savings bonds were gone. There was a note stapled to the bag in my father's handwriting. If you come back, I will shoot you. You are out of the will. You are out of the family. Do not contact us. I walked to the bank to check my college fund. Frozen. My father had drained it that morning. I was 17. I had no money, no home, no family, and a reputation that was being destroyed minute by the rumors spreading through town. I was a monster. I walked to the bus station. I used the loose change I found in my pockets to buy a ticket to the end of the line. I didn't care where it went. I just needed to be somewhere where nobody knew the name Thomas Miller. That bus ride was the funeral for the boy I used to be. I cried for the first hour. Then I slept. And when I woke up, I made a vow. I would survive. I would succeed. And one day, I would make them regret the day they chose the lie over the truth. The bus dropped me off in a city 3 hours away. It was a gray, industrial place. Smokestacks, concrete, and people who looked like they had forgotten how to smile. I spent the first week living in a cardboard box behind a grocery store. I learned very quickly that pride doesn't fill your stomach. I ate bagels from the dumpster. I washed my face in the bathroom of a gas station until the owner chased me out with a broom. I needed a job. But who hires a 17-year-old with no ID, no address, and a face that looks like it went 12 rounds with a boxer? I walked into every shop, diner, and construction site. Help wanted signs were everywhere. But the moment they saw me, the answer was always no. Then I found Andy's garage. It was a rundown place on the edge of town. There was a flickering neon sign and a smell of oil and stale coffee. I walked in. An old man was under the hood of a Ford truck. He was huge, broad shoulders, bald head, arms covered in grease and old tattoos. Marine Corps tattoos. "We ain't hiring," he grunted without looking up. "I didn't ask," I said. My voice was raspy from sleeping in the cold. "I just want to know if I can sweep the floors in exchange for sleeping in that shed out back. It's going to snow tonight." He stood up and wiped his hands on a rag. He looked at me. He had eyes like steel bearings. He looked at my bruised jaw, my dirty tuxedo shirt which I was still wearing because I had nothing else. "You in trouble with the law, kid?" he asked. "No, sir. Just trouble with life." He stared at me for a long time. Then he tossed me the rag. "Clean up Bay 3. There's a cot in the back office. Don't steal anything, or I'll bury you in the back lot." "Yes, sir." That was how I met Andy. He saved my life. For the next 6 months, I was a ghost. I worked from dawn until midnight. I swept floors, I organized tools, I fetched coffee. I didn't talk much. I didn't want anyone to know who I was. I was terrified my father would find me, or the police would come knocking with false charges. One day, the HVAC system in the garage broke down. It was the middle of July, scorching hot. Andy was cursing, banging on the unit with a wrench. "Damn thing is shot," he yelled. "Can't afford a new one right now." I walked over. I had always been good with machines. I liked how they made sense. If a machine broke, there was a reason. A loose wire, a broken gear. It wasn't like people. Machines didn't lie. "Let me look at it," I said. "You?" Andy snorted. "You're a floor sweeper. Give me 10 minutes. I opened the panel. I traced the wiring. I found the short circuit and a blown capacitor. I rewired it using spare parts from a scrapped washing machine in the back. 10 minutes later, the compressor hummed to life. Cold air blasted into the shop. Andy looked at the unit, then at me. "Where did you learn to do that?" "I read the manual," I lied. I just had an instinct for it. You're wasted pushing a broom, Andy grunted. The next day, he threw a heavy book on my cot. Principles of Heating, Ventilation, and Air Conditioning. Read it, he said. You're going to trade school. I can't, I said. I don't have money. I don't have parents to sign the loans. I'm paying, Andy said. Consider it a loan. You pay me back from your salary when you're making big bucks. That was the turning point. I legally changed my name that month. I dropped Miller. I took my grandmother's maiden name, Sterling. Thomas Sterling sounded strong. It sounded like money. I got my GED. I went to trade school at night and worked at the garage during the day. I was obsessed. I didn't date. I didn't party. I worked. Every time I felt tired, every time I wanted to quit, I remembered the look on my father's face when he threw me out. I remembered and smirk. Fuel. It was all fuel. By the time I was 22, I was the best HVAC technician in the county. I was making a good salary, but I wasn't satisfied. I wanted more. I wanted power. I started my own company, Sterling Climate Control, with one van and a toolbox. I took the jobs nobody else wanted. I worked Christmas Day. I worked in attics that were 130 degrees. I worked in basements flooded with sewage. I saved every penny. I didn't buy fancy clothes. I lived in a small apartment. I invested everything back into the business. One van became 5. 5 became 20. I started getting contracts for commercial buildings, then skyscrapers. I needed a lawyer to handle the incorporation and the contracts. I hired the best one in the city. I remember sitting in his office signing the papers. Mr. Sterling, the lawyer said, your assets are significant. Do you have a plan for your estate? Inheritance? Beneficiaries? I have no family, I said coldly. If I die, liquidate everything and give it to the orphanage on 5th Street. He looked surprised, but he nodded. By 25, I was a millionaire. By 27, I was one of the biggest contractors in the state. I bought the Rolls-Royce not because I needed it, but because it was the ultimate symbol that I had won. But winning felt empty. I had money, but I had no one to share it with. Andy had retired and moved to Florida. I bought him a condo there as a thank you. I was alone in my penthouse, looking out at the city lights. That's when I hired the private investigator. I told myself it was just curiosity. I wanted to know if the karma I believed in had actually struck. The report came back a week later. It was a thick folder. I opened it and drank a glass of scotch as I read the demise of the Miller family. It was brutal, and had never gone to college. She had the baby, a girl she put up for adoption immediately because she wasn't ready to be a mother. The guy was some drug dealer who was now in prison. So much for my father's perfect daughter. Then came the divorce or almost divorce. My parents' marriage had crumbled under the stress. They stayed together only for appearance, and kept getting into trouble: DUIs, shoplifting, bad investments. My father kept bailing her out. He drained his retirement fund. He mortgaged the house. He sold his hardware stores to pay for her lawyers and her debts. And then the health issues. Robert Miller had stage 4 kidney failure. He needed dialysis 3 times a week. The insurance had run out. They were drowning in medical bills. The bank had initiated foreclosure proceedings on 42 Oak Street last month. I closed the folder. I looked at my reflection in the window. I saw the boy who was kicked out in the rain. It's time, I whispered to the empty room. I called my broker the next morning. Get me the foreclosure paperwork for 42 Oak Street. I want to buy the debt. Cash. That brings us back to the living room, to the smell of decay, to my mother weeping and my father dying and my sister scheming. Standing in that living room, checking my watch, I felt a vibration in my pocket. It was Marcus Thorne. Marcus was my biggest client. He was a real estate developer who owned half the skyline. He was the one who taught me how to wear a suit, how to intimidate without shouting. I stepped out onto the porch to take the call, leaving my family in their panic. Thomas, Marcus's voice boomed, the merger is going through. We just signed the HVAC contract for the new stadium. You're looking at a $10 million profit this year. That's good news, Marcus, I said, watching a squirrel run across the overgrown lawn. You don't sound excited. You sound like you're at a funeral. Something like that, I said. I'm at the old house. Ah, Marcus paused. He knew the story. He was one of the few people I trusted. Did you burn it down yet? Not yet. They're still inside. Don't let them get in your head, kid, Marcus warned. Pity is a trap. They made their bed. Let them sleep in it. I know. I'm just enforcing the eviction. Good. Listen, I need you at the site tomorrow. And Thomas? Enjoy the win. You earned it. I hung up. $10 million. Another zero on the bank account. It meant nothing right now. I walked back inside. The hour was almost up. The mood in the room had shifted. My mother had stopped crying. She was frantic now, packing clothes into garbage bags. Ironic, considering that's how my stuff left this house. And was on the phone, screaming at someone. I don't care. You're supposed to be my lawyer. Do something. He can't just kick us out. She paused, listening. What do you mean he owns the deed? Fix it. She threw the phone onto the couch. She glared at me. You think you're so big, she spat. You think money makes you better than us? Yes, I said simply. In this situation, it literally does. It makes me the owner and you the trespasser. My father groaned. We all looked at the hospital bed. He was clutching his chest. His face was gray. Robert. Linda rushed to him. Robert, breathe. My chest. He gasped. Water. He needs his meds, Linda cried. They're in the kitchen cabinet. I packed them. She started digging through the boxes she had just taped shut. She was panicking, throwing things aside. I stood there and watched. Part of me, the cold business part, thought this is it. This is justice. But another part, the human part, felt a twitch. Which box? I asked. I don't know, she screamed. Help me. I sighed. I walked over, ripped open the box nearest to the sink. It was just dishes. I opened another. Clothes. My father started to convulse. The dialysis machine beeped an alarm. Call 911. Linda shrieked, and just stood there, frozen. She was useless in a crisis. She was always the damsel, never the hero. I pulled out my phone and dialed 3 digits. Medical emergency at 42 Oak Street. Male, 60s, kidney failure, possible cardiac arrest. Send an ambulance. Priority 1. I hung up and looked at them. They're 5 minutes out. He's dying, Linda wailed. She grabbed my father's hand. Robert, hold on. Please don't leave me. My father looked at me. His eyes were wide with panic. For the first time in 10 years, he wasn't looking at me with hate. He was looking at me with fear. He realized that his life was in the hands of the son he destroyed. Thomas, he wheezed. I didn't answer. I just checked my watch. The eviction deadline had passed. But I guess even I wasn't heartless enough to kick a dying man onto the sidewalk. The paramedics arrived in 4 minutes. They burst in, took control. They loaded him onto a stretcher. Whose family? The paramedic asked. I am, Linda said. I'm his wife. I'm his daughter, and said, grabbing her purse. The paramedic looked at me. You coming? I hesitated. I should get in my Rolls-Royce and drive away. I should go to a steakhouse, order a bottle of wine, and celebrate the closing of this chapter. But I needed to see the end. I needed to see it all the way through. I'll follow in my car, I said, as the ambulance wailed away, leaving the foreclosure sign vibrating in its wake. I got back into my Phantom. I followed the lights and sirens. I wasn't going there to hold his hand. I was going there to witness the final collapse of the Miller dynasty. The hospital waiting room smelled of antiseptic and cheap coffee. It was a smell I hated. It reminded me of the night and accused me. The night I ended up in the ER getting stitches in my jaw before being kicked out. Linda and Ann were sitting in the plastic chairs. Linda was praying and was texting. I stood by the vending machine drinking a bottle of water. I looked out of place in my $2,000 suit. A doctor came out. He looked tired. Dr. Hill. I recognized the name. He had been the family doctor for years. He was the one who probably delivered Ann's baby. Mrs. Miller? Linda jumped up. How is he? Stabilized, Dr. Hill said. But it's bad, Linda. His kidneys are functioning at less than 5%. The dialysis isn't enough anymore. His body is rejecting the treatment. He needs a transplant. Immediately. We've been on the list for 2 years. Linda cried. I know, but we don't have time for the list. He has days, maybe a week. We need a living donor. A blood relative is the best match. The doctor turned to Anne. Anne, he said, we tested you last year. You were a partial match. It's not perfect, but given the emergency, it could work. It's his only chance. I watched Anne. This was her moment. Her father, the man who sacrificed his son, his fortune, and his honor for her, was dying. All she had to do was give something back, and shifted on her feet. She clutched her expensive designer bag, probably bought with the last of my dad's money. I can't, she said. The doctor blinked. Excuse me? I can't do the surgery, and said, her voice rising. I have a modeling gig coming up next month. I can't have a scar. And the recovery time? Who's going to take care of me? Linda looked at her daughter. Anne, it's your father. He's dying. I know, Mom, but it's my body. You can't ask me to cut myself open. What if something goes wrong? What if I die? It's a routine procedure, Dr. Hill said gently. The risk is minimal. No, and shouted. I won't do it. It's too much to ask. He's lived his life. I have my whole life ahead of me. There it was. The naked, ugly truth. The golden child was just gold-plated. Underneath, she was rusted iron. Linda stood there, mouth open. She looked from and to the closed door of the ICU. The realization was crashing down on her. She had bet on the wrong horse. She had thrown away the loyal son for the selfish daughter. Then, slowly, her eyes turned to me. I was standing in the shadows, just watching. Thomas, she whispered. No, I knew what was coming. She walked toward me. Her steps were shaky. Thomas, she said, her voice cracking. You're his son. Biologically, maybe, I said, cold as ice. But legally, emotionally, I'm a stranger. Remember, please. She reached out to touch my arm. I stepped back. He's your father. Despite everything, he gave you life. He tried to destroy my life. I corrected her. He made a mistake. Linda cried. We all make mistakes. A mistake is forgetting to take out the trash. Linda, disowning your teenage son and leaving him homeless in winter is a choice. A deliberate, cruel choice. He's sorry. I know he is. Did he say that? I asked. Did he say the words? Or are you just projecting? Thomas, please. She was getting hysterical now. People in the waiting room were staring. Test for him. Just take the test. If you're a match, please. Can't lose him. I've lost everything else. The house, the money. I can't lose Robert. Ask and I pointed at my sister, who was aggressively typing on her phone, ignoring us. She won't do it, Linda sobbed. She's scared. She's selfish, I said. And you made her that way. You enabled her. You protected her. This is your creation. I turned to leave. I'm leaving. Send the funeral bill to my office. I'll pay it. That's the only contribution I'll make. I started walking down the hallway. My shoes clicked rhythmically on the linoleum. Thomas! Linda screamed. I didn't stop. Then I heard a thud. I stopped. I turned around. My mother was on her knees, right there in the middle of the hallway, hands clasped together, weeping openly. Please, she shrieked. I'll do anything. I'll tell everyone. I'll tell the truth. I walked back slowly. I stood over her. What truth? I asked softly. She looked up at me, mascara running down her face. She looked at and then back at me. She took a deep breath, and for the first time in 10 years, she decided to be a mother. The hospital hallway fell silent. Nurses stopped at their stations. Visitors lowered their magazines. Everyone was looking at the well-dressed man standing over the weeping old woman. "What truth, Linda?" I repeated. She gripped the fabric of my trousers. "We knew," she choked out. "We knew you didn't touch her." The world stopped spinning. I felt a roar in my ears, like the ocean. "Say that again." "We knew," she wailed. "That night, 10 years ago, after Robert threw you out and told us." She admitted it was Vernon, that drug dealer boy. I stared at her. My hands curled into fists so tight my nails dug into my palms. "You knew," I said, my voice trembling with a rage I had bottled up for a decade. "You knew I was innocent, and you left me out there." "We were scared," Linda cried. "Robert said. He said if the truth got out that Anne was pregnant by a criminal, the family name would be ruined. He said the neighbors would talk. He said Anne's future would be destroyed." "So you destroyed mine instead?" "You were strong," she tried to justify it, looking up at me with pleading eyes. "Robert said you were a boy, you could handle it, you could survive. But and she was fragile. We thought if we just sent you away, the rumors would focus on you, and we could send Anne away quietly to have the baby, and then bring her back as if nothing happened." I laughed. It was a dark, hollow sound. "I was the sacrifice. I was the scapegoat for your reputation. We were wrong." She buried her face in her hands. "We were so wrong. Look at us now. And hates us. We have nothing. It's punishment. God is punishing us." I looked over at Anne. She wasn't looking at her phone anymore. She was looking at the floor, her face red. She wasn't ashamed of what she did. She was ashamed that the secret was out. "You let me sleep in a car," I said, leaning down into my mother's face. "You let me starve. You let me think my father hated me for something I did, when all along he hated me for something he did." "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry, Thomas. But please, he's dying. He's your father. His blood is in your veins. Don't let him die for our sins. Be better than us. Please, save him." I looked at the closed door of the ICU. Behind that door lay the man who orchestrated my exile. The man who chose his pride over his son. "You want his blood?" I asked. "Yes," she nodded frantically. "Just take the test. Please." I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. "Okay," I said. Linda stopped crying. She looked at me with hope. You will." "I'll take the test," I said. "Call the nurse." The next hour was a blur of needles and vials. I sat in a chair, letting them draw my blood. I didn't look at Linda. I didn't look at Anne. I just stared at the wall. Dr. Hill rushed the test. He knew the urgency. 2 hours later, we were back in the waiting room. Dr. Hill came out holding a clipboard. "Well?" Linda asked, her hands trembling. "It's a match," Dr. Hill said. "A near-perfect match. 99% compatibility. Thomas has 2 healthy kidneys. We could prep for surgery within the hour." Linda let out a cry of relief. "Oh, thank God. Thank God. Thomas." She turned to hug me. I stepped sideways. She hugged the air. I reached out and took the clipboard from the doctor. I looked at the numbers. The medical proof that I was Robert Miller's son. The undeniable biological link. "It's a match," I said, reading the paper. "Scientific proof." "When can we start?" Linda asked the doctor, wiping her eyes. "My husband. Is he prepped?" "Thomas needs to sign the consent forms," Dr. Hill said. He handed me a pen and a thick stack of papers. "Thomas, this is a major surgery. There are risks, but you're saving a life." I took the pen. I looked at the paper. Consent for organ donation. I looked at Linda. "You wanted proof that I was his son. Here it is." I waved the test results. I am his son, which means I have his stubbornness. And I have his memory. And then, with a calm, deliberate motion, I ripped the consent form in half. The sound of the tearing paper was loud in the quiet room. "Thomas!" Linda gasped. "What are you doing?" I ripped it again, and again, until the papers were confetti in my hands. I let the pieces fall to the floor. "No," I said. "No." Dr. Hill looked shocked. "Mr. Sterling, your father will die without this." "That man died to me 10 years ago," I said. "I just took the test to prove a point. I wanted you to know that the salvation you needed was standing right in front of you, and you didn't deserve it." "You can't do this," Linda screamed. She lunged at me, hitting my chest with her weak fists. "You monster! He's your father. You have to save him." I caught her wrists. I didn't squeeze, but I held her firm. "A father protects his children," I said, looking deep into her eyes. "He doesn't feed them to the wolves to save face." "You want a kidney?" asked the golden child. I nodded at Anne. "She's a partial match. Maybe 60% is enough. Let her sacrifice her bikini body for the man who gave her everything." I let go of Linda. She collapsed back into the chair, sobbing uncontrollably. I turned to Anne. "Your turn, sis. Step up, or watch him die. It's on you now." And looked terrified. She looked at the doctor, then at the door. She looked like a trapped animal. I knew she wouldn't do it. She loved herself too much. I adjusted my cuffs. "Doctor, I'm leaving. Do not contact me again." "Thomas, wait," Dr. Hill called out. "You're really walking away?" "I'm not walking away," I said, turning back one last time. "I'm driving away, in a Rolls-Royce." I walked out of the hospital. The automatic doors slid open, and the hot, humid air hit me. Felt like freedom. I got into my car. I started the engine. I didn't look back at the hospital windows. I drove to the old house, my house now. The demolition crew was coming on Monday, but I decided I wouldn't tear it down. I pulled out my phone and called Andy. "Hey kid," Andy answered. "How did it go?" "It's done," I said. "I own the house. And Andy, I'm not tearing it down." "No? What are you going to do with it?" "I'm going to fix it up," I said, looking at the rotting porch. "I'm going to turn it into a shelter for kids who get kicked out by their parents. We'll call it the Andy Center." There was silence on the other end, then a rough cough. "You're a good man, Thomas." "I'm trying," I said. "My father died 2 days later, and fled town before the funeral to avoid the debts. Linda is currently living in a state-assisted nursing home. I pay for her room, but I never visit. Biology is an accident. Family is a choice, and I chose mine. The funeral of Robert Miller was a quiet affair. It rained because of course it did. It was that kind of cinematic cliché that life sometimes throws at you just to drive the point home. I paid for the service. I paid for the mahogany casket with the silk lining. I paid for the plot in the expensive section of the cemetery, right under an old oak tree that looked suspiciously like the one in our backyard. But I didn't sit in the front row. I stood 50 yards back under a large black umbrella, watching from a distance. There were maybe 10 people there. A few old drinking buddies, a couple of distant cousins who were sniffing around for an inheritance that didn't exist, and my mother. Linda looked tiny in her black dress. She was leaning heavily on a walker, looking around, scanning the horizon. I knew who she was looking for. She was looking for Anne. But Anne wasn't there. My sister, the golden child, the one Robert had destroyed his family to protect, hadn't bothered to show up. The police were looking for her regarding several unpaid loans and credit card fraud committed in my father's name during his final weeks. She had drained his last remaining account, the one meant for funeral expenses, and vanished. So I had to cut the check. It was the final invoice on the ledger of my childhood. I watched as the priest said the standard words. He spoke of Robert as a devoted father and a pillar of the community. I didn't feel anger anymore. I just felt a profound sense of waste. Robert Miller had died thinking he was protecting his legacy. But in the end, his legacy was an empty bank account, a fugitive daughter, and a son who was watching his burial like a stranger watching a movie. When the service ended, the few guests drifted away quickly. Nobody likes to linger around the stench of failure. Linda stood by the open grave for a long time. I walked over. The wet grass squished under my Italian leather shoes. She heard me coming and turned. Her face was a map of tragedy. Her eyes were red, swollen, and desperate. "You came," she whispered. "I paid." I corrected her. "There's a difference." "And didn't come," she said, her voice trembling. I called her cell phone 100 times. It goes straight to voicemail. How could she not come? He died for her. "That's exactly why she didn't come," I said, standing beside her but not looking at the grave. "She can't face the reality of what she cost him, and only likes things when they're free, Linda. The moment a bill comes due, emotional or financial, she runs." Linda looked down at the casket. "He loved you, Thomas, in his own way. Toward the end, he asked for you." I tightened my grip on the umbrella handle. "Don't do that. Don't rewrite history to make yourself feel better. He didn't ask for me. He asked for a kidney. He asked for a spare part to keep his own machine running. Let's not confuse desperation with love." She started to cry again, that same helpless weeping that used to make me run to comfort her when I was a child. Now it just made me check my watch. "Where do I go?" she asked. "The house is gone. The bank took the car. I have nothing." "You have a room," I said. "I arranged it this morning. It's at the Shady Oaks Assisted Living Facility. It's clean. They serve 3 meals a day. There's a garden." "A nursing home?" She looked horrified. "Thomas, I'm only 65. I can't live in a home." "It's that or the shelter," I said bluntly. "And frankly, you wouldn't fit in at the shelter I'm building. Those kids are victims of bad parenting. It would be a conflict of interest to have you there." It was cruel. I knew it was cruel, but it was also the truth. I handed her a card with the address. "A car is waiting for you at the gate. My driver will take you there. Your fees are paid for the next year. After that, we'll review based on your behavior." "My behavior?" She looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. "Yes, if you continue to guilt-trip me, or if you try to funnel any of my money to and the payments stop. You are on scholarship now, Linda. Don't blow it." I turned and walked away. I left her standing by the grave of the man she enabled, holding a business card from the son she betrayed. I got back into my Rolls-Royce, and for the first time in weeks, I turned on the radio. I needed noise. I needed to drown out the silence of the graveyard. The next few months were a blur of construction and legal battles. I didn't just buy the house on Oak Street. I gutted it. I hired a crew to strip it down to the studs. I wanted every memory, every molecule of the Miller family history, scraped out of there. I remember the day we tore down the wall of Anne's room. The contractor found a stash of old letters behind the baseboard. They were from Vernon, the drug dealer. I read one. It was dated a week before the incident 10 years ago. In it, and talked about how she was scared of getting caught, how she needed to find a way to fix it, so Daddy wouldn't cut off her allowance. There it was, in black and blue ink, premeditated. She hadn't just panicked. She had planned it. She had framed me because I was the convenient pawn. I burned the letters in a metal barrel in the backyard. Watching the paper curl and turn to ash felt more like a funeral than the one at the cemetery. It was the funeral of my last shred of doubt. While the house was being transformed, I had to deal with the legal fallout of my father's estate. It was a mess. Inheritance is a funny word. People assume it means money. For me, it meant debt. Creditors were coming out of the woodwork. Robert had leveraged everything. I had to hire a team of lawyers just to protect my own assets from being entangled with his. I sat in boardrooms for hours, signing affidavits, proving that Sterling Climate Control was a separate entity from the disaster that was Miller Hardware. And then there was Anne. She was caught 3 months later in Nevada. She had tried to open a credit card using the identity of a dead woman. It was sloppy, desperate. I got the call from the district attorney. Mr. Sterling, he said, your sister is looking at 5 to 7 years for identity theft and fraud. She's requesting you as a character witness. She says you can vouch for her difficult upbringing. I swiveled my chair around to look at the city skyline. I can certainly testify about her character, I said, but I don't think it will help her defense. She claims she has no money for a lawyer. She wants to know if you'll cover her legal fees. I laughed. It was a genuine laugh this time. Tell her I'm busy. I'm building a house. I didn't pay for her lawyer. She got a public defender. She pleaded guilty to a lesser charge and got 4 years. I didn't visit her. I didn't write. The moment the gavel banged, the connection was severed. The renovation of 42 Oak Street was nearing completion. It didn't look like the Miller house anymore. We had removed the pretentious white columns. We painted it a warm, welcoming slate blue. We expanded the back to add more bedrooms. I stood on the sidewalk one evening, looking at it. The for sale sign was long gone. In its place was a modest wooden sign that read, "The Andy Center, a safe haven." It wasn't a monument to my ego. It was a correction of a mistake. My phone rang. It was the number I had been waiting for. "I'm at the airport, kid." The voice on the other end rasped. "I'm on my way, Andy," I said. I jumped into the car. Not the Rolls-Royce this time. I took the pickup truck. The Rolls was for business. The truck was for family. And I was going to pick up the only father I had left. Andy looked older. The Florida sun had tanned his skin to the color of old leather. And he moved a little slower, his knees giving him trouble. But his eyes were the same, sharp, assessing, intolerant of nonsense. When he saw the house, he didn't say anything for a long time. He leaned on his cane, staring at the sign with his name on it. "You didn't have to do this," he grumbled. But I saw his chin tremble slightly. "I didn't do it for you," I said, leaning against the truck. "I did it for the kid sleeping in a dumpster right now who thinks his life is over." "The Andy Center," he read aloud, "sounds like a place where you get yelled at for holding a wrench wrong." "That's exactly what it is," I smiled. "I need a manager, Andy. Someone to live in the carriage house out back. Someone to teach these kids that the world owes them nothing. But that doesn't mean they can't take everything if they work for it." He looked at me. "I'm retired, Thomas." "You're bored," I countered. "And you miss bossing people around." He spat on the ground. "When do I start?" We opened the doors 2 weeks later. There was no ribbon-cutting ceremony. No press. I didn't want this to be a media circus. I wanted it to be safe. The first resident arrived on a Tuesday night. It was raining again, mirroring the night I left. His name was Marcus, ironically enough. He was 16. He had been kicked out because his stepfather didn't like the way he looked. He was wearing a t-shirt in 40-degree weather. He had a black eye. He was shivering, not just from the cold, but from that deep, rattling fear that comes when your foundation is ripped away. I was in the office reviewing invoices when Andy brought him in. "Sit," Andy told the kid, pointing to a chair. Andy poured him a cup of hot cocoa. It was the only soft thing about Andy. I walked out of the office. The kid looked up. He saw my suit, my watch. He flinched. He expected judgment. He expected an authority figure who was going to tell him what he did wrong. I sat down opposite him. "You hungry?" I asked. He nodded, eyes downcast. "We have stew," I said. "But before you eat, I need you to know the rules. There are only 2 rules in this house." He looked up, wary. "Rule number 1. You are safe here. Nobody hits you. Nobody screams at you. The lock on your door works, and you have the only key." The kid's shoulders dropped about an inch. "Rule number 2, I continued, leaning forward. Your past is not your future. Whatever they told you, whatever names they called you, lazy, stupid, unwanted, that stops at the front door. In this house, you are defined by what you do next, not by what was done to you." The kid stared at me. His lip quivered. "My dad said," he said I was trash. I felt a ghost of a pain in my jaw, where Robert Miller had punched me. "My dad told me I was a monster." I said softly. He told me I deserved to freeze to death. The kid's eyes went wide. You? Me? I pointed to the ceiling. I grew up in this house. I was thrown off this porch. I lived in a car. And now I own the block. I stood up and grabbed a heavy winter jacket from the donation rack. A brand new Sterling climate control parka. I tossed it to him. Put that on. Eat some stew. Then get some sleep. Tomorrow, Andy is going to teach you how to weld. You're going to learn a trade. You're going to earn your keep. And you're going to build a life so big that the people who threw you away will need a telescope just to see you. The kid put on the jacket. It was too big for him, but he zipped it up to his chin. He looked at me, and for the first time, the fear in his eyes was replaced by something else. A tiny spark. Hope. Thanks, he whispered. Don't thank me, I said. Work. I walked out onto the porch. The rain had stopped. The clouds were breaking, revealing a sliver of the moon. I looked at my Rolls-Royce parked at the curb. For years, that car had been my identity. It was my armor, my screw you to the world. But looking at it now, it was just a car, a collection of metal and rubber. It wasn't who I was. I was the man who built this house. Not the physical structure, but the purpose inside it. I thought about my father, rotting in the ground with his pride. I thought about and sitting in a cell with her victimhood. I thought about Linda, alone in a room full of strangers. They were prisoners of their own choices. They had chosen image over substance. They had chosen blood over loyalty. I took a deep breath of the cool night air. It smelled like wet pavement and pine needles. It smelled like the future. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah, my ex-girlfriend. She had heard about the center. I saw what you're doing. It's amazing. I was wondering if maybe we could get coffee sometime? Catch up. I looked at the message. 10 years ago, I would have killed for that text. I would have begged for her approval. I typed a reply, I don't drink coffee with ghosts. I deleted the thread and blocked the number. I turned back to the house. Through the window, I could see Andy showing the kid how to hold a spoon properly, grumbling something that made the kid smile. I wasn't Thomas Miller anymore. I wasn't the victim. I wasn't even the avenger. I was Thomas Sterling, and I was finally home. Biology is an accident. Family is a choice. If there is one thing I want you to take away from my story, it is this: you do not owe your life to the people who gave you life, especially if they use that bond to break you. We grow up hearing that blood is thicker than water, that we must forgive family no matter what. That is a dangerous lie. Toxic people are toxic, whether they share your DNA or not. My parents chose their reputation over my safety. My sister chose her comfort over my future. If I had stayed, if I had begged for their scraps of love, I would have been destroyed. My success didn't come from the money or the Rolls-Royce. Those are just things. My true success came from the moment I accepted that I was alone, and that I had the power to build a new family. I found a father in a mechanic named Andy. I found a purpose in a kid named Marcus. Self-worth is not an inheritance. It is something you build, brick by brick, by setting boundaries and refusing to let others define your value. If you are in a situation where you are the scapegoat, where you are only loved when you are useful, leave. Pack your bags. Walk into the blizzard. It will be cold, it will be hard, but I promise you, the warmth you find on the other side will be real. Now, I want to hear from you. Has there ever been a moment in your life where you had to choose between protecting your peace and pleasing your family? Did you have to cut someone off to save yourself? Tell me your story in the comments. Or, if you agree that loyalty is more important than bloodline, just comment the word good below. Let's show the algorithm that we value truth over tradition. I'm Thomas Sterling. Thank you for listening. Thank you so much for staying with me until the very end of today's story. Family drama is never easy to talk about, but sharing these moments with you makes the burden feel a little lighter. I hope that through my journey, you might find a piece of your own story or perhaps a lesson to hold on to. If you connected with this video, please consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell. Your support is the biggest motivation for me to keep sharing these raw, honest chapters of my life. Don't forget to leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts or similar experiences. Stay tuned for the next update, and I'll see you in the next video.